conectando con nuestra comunidad. Esto es ¿Qué pasa Boston?
¿Qué pasa Boston? How are you today? I have an amazing guest and you have no idea what he's dedicated his life to. But before I even introduce him, I want you to know that it was a very big goal of mine to have him here because he doesn't know, but I'm a big fan. A big fan that has watched all his documentaries, that follows him on his GBH show. And I had the pleasure of meeting him at a panel. And when I was there, I was starstruck, but I didn't show you. So it's the reverse way today. I get to interview you, and I'm so happy and Coss to have you at my show, Qué Pasa Boston.
Bienvenido. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I was dying to ask you so many questions. First and foremost, because we're colleagues.
Yeah.
We share a little bit of the mic on your end and I'm in my end. But I've been aiming to get a production like you have. So tell me a little bit of how you got into the whole GBH thing, before even that, your journalism, how you start your career.
So the place it starts for me is music. I was, if you go back to high school, I was, the kid playing in bands, the kid with a microphone and a little studio in my bedroom, making tracks and beats and things. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
And about 10 years ago, I had an opportunity to make a radio news piece. I'd never done anything like it. I'd never studied journalism. I'd never worked in radio. I had no background in broadcasting. But I made this short little documentary piece. It was for a class assignment. Actually, I was in graduate school and I was assigned to make a radio piece.
Okay.
And I realized that, coming from music, coming from making songs in my bedroom, I kind of knew my way around sound. I knew how to make stuff sound okay, how to edit, how to use, things you understand, like compression. And it was really this eye-opening moment of, wow, I can take my background in music and sound and I can apply it to the questions I have about the world, about our society, about politics, about culture, history. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Were you ever afraid of getting on the mic and asking the tough question?
So when I started out, I was off the mic. I was doing, I was exactly, for probably 5-ish years when I first started doing this work, I was always behind the scenes. I could send you a half a dozen podcasts I made where you never hear my voice once. And the thing that ultimately got me in front of the mic was just one of the beauties of podcasting, which you understand. We're sitting in a room, just the two of us hanging out. You don't need a big staff to do this. You can just do it.
And more with the technology and AI now, forget about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, what got me behind the mic was feeling like I have all the skills. Like I can do this entirely on my own or with a very small team. And that's what got me into sort of telling my own stories.
So you start behind the scenes, podcasting. GBH is not behind the scenes and it's not a small company.
Nope.
How did you get to that point? I mean, was that always your goal? Was that were you excited about it? They approached you, you approached them. How did it happen?
So it feels kind of cosmic now when I look at it. I told you 10 years ago, this is 2015, I was given an assignment to make a 3-minute radio piece. I'd never done anything like it before. I was doing this workshop, like I mentioned. And the person leading the workshop said, hey, I think I could help you pitch this to an actual radio show. She pitched it to WGBH, to a show they have there that's still on the air called The World. And so literally the first thing I ever made. I go on this journey, I do other shows, I produce other things for other people. And then just a few years ago, I found myself, doing some freelance work with WGBH, working on a few projects. I worked on, if you ever watch Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah, of course I do.
I helped launch the Antiques Roadshow podcast. I worked on a Nova podcast, for their science show. So I knew some of the folks in the building, and I had the same feeling that you have, like, this is a great historic radio station. They should have a documentary podcast that draws on the rich archives of the decades of history in the building.
And who we are. There's so much
and tell
history.
Stories about this place. And so I pitched them this idea of doing a podcast about the Big Dig, which listeners here in Boston,
it was insane.
You'll many of you will know, was this epic infrastructure project. And that's what started the relationship, really, was that idea. And that was just a few years ago.
So this show is most important to me because it's my platform to share tools and resources for our work.
Yeah.
It's a show that also gives them the opportunity to learn a little bit about who's the guest, but also of how they can accomplish their dreams and their goals.
Yeah.
If you were that young Ian behind, the speakers and just listening to this show, what was that turning point that made you decide that, or made you think that you could do it? Because, the imposter syndrome, it's big, especially for us that we see so many podcasts nowadays, so many shows, so many channels. So it can get overwhelming. What would you say to that young Ian who's starting?
I think the lesson I had to learn that I would pass on to somebody in my same position years ago, or my same position now, would be, there was a moment in my career where I think pretty good at doing the behind the scenes thing. And if I just stayed sort of comfortable in that, I could still be doing that now. And there's nothing against that work. I mean, it's great, fascinating work.
We need it too.
We need that too. But no one was ever going to push me out. No one ever came to me and said, wow, you're pretty good at telling other people's stories. Like, do you have a story you want to tell? Usually that opportunity that doesn't come to you. And so there was a moment, this was in around 2020. It was actually during the pandemic. A lot of people were kind of reevaluating what they're doing. And so what it took for me is, during that, I had a little free time. I did a totally self-produced podcast. This is the first show that I ever hosted myself. And
when you say podcast, it's a series?
It was a series. It was a multi-part, it was a 5-part series. There was no budget. There was no
It was just
you,
myself, and
I had a friend, Lacey Roberts, who's still the editor for the work I do at GBH now. But she worked with me as my sounding board editor for it. And it was a passion project. We did it together. I had no expectations. I had no institution behind me to market it. And I put that out in the world in 2021. And it actually, to my great surprise, it went way further than I ever thought it would. And that was really what opened the door for me. So I think, especially in a medium like this, where you don't need anyone's permission, and you don't really need much more technology than most people can scrounge together. There's nothing stopping you from just doing it.
It's funny you say that because it was very similar to me.
Yeah.
When I was brought into this project of Qué Pasa Boston, I never even thought that I was going to be doing this. I was actually running the sales department on the side, on the Hispanic market, and I was like, okay, I'll figure it out. I didn't know how to press buttons. You see all these complex, equipment, but I figured it out, and I've been figuring it out ever since. And I do everything, from the editing to the everything. Even though it's a huge company, I've been taking this project as a little baby, and I've been molding, and it was very scary.
Yeah.
Because I did not know what was gonna happen on the other side. I was like, are they listening really? Am I doing this just for myself?
Right.
Are they gonna like it? Are they judging? Is it gonna be transcendent? Is it gonna really convey the message that I wanna share? And to my surprise, it's been an amazing journey. I would love for you to share that journey that you are experiencing right now, because you have a great documentary about our fishing community here in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I was looking around for story ideas. So just for context, our first season, the show about the Big Dig, had come out. I didn't know what would happen. It ended up making, the best of the year list from the New Yorker, from Apple Podcasts, from Vulture. It won a Peabody Award. It was on the Apple Podcast charts.
How does that feel?
It was surreal. I mean, I had people who I had considered heroes reaching out to me to say, like, hey, I listened to the show, I really appreciated it. I mean, it was truly a life-changing experience. And so I'd done that one documentary without any conception of what would come after it. And just a couple months after it came out, GBH came back to me and said, let's do another. What other ideas do you have? And I really didn't have anything ready. Like, I didn't have an idea queued up. So but I knew that was an opportunity. I did not want to let that pass by. So I said, give me a couple weeks. and I'll try and figure something out. So I was looking around for story ideas, and part of what I wanted to do was, we'd done this story about an infrastructure project in Boston. I wanted to tell different stories about different corners of greater Boston to sort of fill out the whole world of this city and this region, different industries, different communities, different pockets of culture. And so I was looking around for stories, and I stumbled on this article from about a decade ago about this fishing mogul in New Bedford who's known as the CODfather. And I'll admit that just the name caught my attention, right? The
CODfather.
Who calls
That's so
himself a
creative,
CODfather?
I know.
And so just on a whim, I didn't really know what the story was, but I just, I found a phone number online and I called him up. His name is Carlos Rafael. He still lives down in the New Bedford area.
Portuguese?
He's Portuguese, yeah. And he picked up the phone. I was surprised. And he said, sure, why don't you come down and talk? Now, I should say, for context, Carlos, this is not a spoiler to say that Carlos goes to prison at the end of this story. He was convicted of 27 felony crimes involving his fishing business. He has turned down a lot of interview requests over the years. And I don't know why. I think I just caught him at a good time. I asked him the same question of like, why did you agree to this interview? Because I've met other people since who are like, man, I would have loved to talk to Carlos. I tried to talk to Carlos. And so he invited me down. We sat in his office, which, just to paint the scene, he's right by the waterfront in New Bedford, which, if you haven't spent time there,
it's gorgeous.
It's a gorgeous waterfront city. It is the most valuable commercial fishing port, more so than Gloucester, more so than any port in Alaska, Seattle, anything. There are millions and millions of dollars of seafood comes through that port. So there's big warehouses, concrete docks, loading, boats everywhere. It's a real kind of industrial place. And Carlos, you come into his office, and all around the walls are posters from the movie Scarface.
The CODfather.
So that's, and in a way, if you know that the movie, if you know the story of Tony Montana, Carlos is a bit like that. He's an immigrant. He came here as a young man, a risk taker, looking for opportunities, all or nothing, went all in on the fishing business, built an empire. Truly, one of the biggest commercial fishing empires in the country, and then had this very dramatic downfall where he was arrested in an undercover IRS sting operation. And that was the story he told me.
And how is it for you to be part of such a moment, right? Because it's not just about the story you're telling, it's how you're playing an intricate part of telling the story.
Yeah.
So when you're editing, when you're putting the pieces of the puzzle together, like you're like, okay, should I share this part? Because that's the trick when you're editing. You can record all day long, and then it's like, okay, what really is the story that I want to tell, and how am I going to tell it? What was that journey for you?
Yeah, I mean, when we do these documentaries, different than a podcast where you just, turn on the mic and talk. We're recording sometimes 50, 60, 75 interviews. Each interview could be an hour and a half, 2 hours long. We're finding hundreds of archival news clips from the back in time, sifting through so really hundreds and hundreds of hours of material that we then condense down into this documentary. And I think, the challenging thing about telling the story of Carlos is that, as I described, the Scarface posters, the CODfather, the felony charges. I mean, this is a guy, he's a rough character. A lot of people don't like him. He has broken the law. He has hurt people. Not physically, not violently, but, in the way he ran his business. Yeah. And so my goal with the series is, I also don't want to paint him as just a villain, because I think it's kind of tempting to see him as just, this crooked fisherman who, stole the fish.
Right? Where does he fit? Is the, bad mafia guy, or is he the one that produced a lot of revenue for a lot of people for a lot of years? Because, you're feeding families.
Exactly. And that's the complexity that and it was very delicate, because I want to present him as in a human way. And he is, when you talk to people around New Bedford, you ask them about Carlos Rafael, some people will tell you he is a hero. That he kept this port working. He kept people employed. He put, food on people's tables. Yeah. And you talk to other people and they say that Carlos Rafael is the worst thing that ever happened to for the city of New Bedford. You get that whole range.
Hey, they say the
so
same
that's
thing
what we were
about
trying
Tom
to
Brady.
balance.
So he could be a hero because he won so many championships, and at the same time,
Exactly.
it's like, you know, I think everybody has their ups and downs and yins and yangs. For you, what is it? A hero or a villain?
I mean, it's not one or the other. I think what I tried to convey in the series is that Carlos and the whole fishing industry are caught up in a system, you know, and this is going to sound a little nerdy and wonky, but it's a system of regulations, government rules, science, this whole complex web that determines, you know, how much fish that you're allowed to catch, what kinds of fish you were allowed to catch. And I truly believe that everyone in that system, the government scientists, the federal regulators, the politicians, the fishermen, the fish buyers, everybody wants what's best. Everybody wants to feed people and have a healthy fishing industry, but everybody has different and competing interests. And so it is a really complicated situation with a lot of strong feelings, and I truly don't believe anyone is a villain.
Well, I think everybody has their own opinion. There's villains and there's heroes. To me, I'm very grateful that a hero like you is here sharing all the story, all the hours, all the hard work that you've been putting into sharing part of the history of Massachusetts. I'm very glad that you took the opportunity or gave me the opportunity to ask the real questions to you. This is the behind the scenes. Most of the time you don't see it, right? Yeah. That's why it's so popular to have social media, you know, running around a person behind the scenes. What would be, besides this documentary, your next goal, your next step? Because where can we find this documentary too?
Yeah. So if you're listening on, you know, any podcast app, the iHeart app, you can find us. Just look for The Big Dig from GBH News. So if you look for The Big Dig, you'll find that original series about the highway project. You'll also find Catching the CODfather, the story about Carlos Rafael. You'll find everything we've worked on in there. Yeah. And the goal is to keep going. We've got a new documentary coming out in the fall that we had a chance to talk about a little bit when we first met. It's going to be all about the politics of healthcare, which, you know, if you're reading the news or if you're reading your bills right now, you know that healthcare, the cost of healthcare is just a huge issue for the state, for this country, and we're going to dig into that history.
I love it. I just actually had lunch with Tiffany Joseph yesterday because of her book and the amazing story that she's telling us with immigration and how it's affected healthcare. I have also a podcast coming up that it's my personal story with the healthcare system and how it's been a struggle to get my mother on Medicaid and how she's fallen through the cracks of the healthcare system, and how a person like you and I that have the access to the big wigs and to the people that actually understand kind of like what's happening, it's such a hard journey to figure out because nobody knows what's happening, right? It's so complicated. But I also try to create a tool. It's called Accesso, and it's just I'm not an app developer. I'm not an extravagant engineer, but I have a tool that actually gives you a guide and a process of what to do, where to go, who to call from my personal experience. So I'm looking very much so forward to what you're putting together. Let me know if there's anything that I can do to help.
I appreciate that.
And I can't wait to share that information with my audience because I think that here at Qué Pasa Boston, we need more information like what you're putting together.
Yeah, I mean, part of what I'm trying to do across all these projects is take these topics that can feel kind of impenetrable, hard to understand, like healthcare, like fishing regulation, like, you know, infrastructure, and really convey it to people in a personal way, in a story that they can understand. So that is what we're going to try and do.
Well, Ian, thank you very much for being here with me. I can wait again to share your information, to hear where can we find you on social media.
Yeah, you can find me at Ian Coss. That's COSS on pretty much all the platforms. So I'm out there.
Thank you. Ya lo saben, download that iHeart app and select Qué Pasa Boston as your favorite podcast. And don't forget to listen every Sunday. Stories like Ian that can change your life as well. Thank you, Ian, very much. There you go.
Cada domingo te traemos las historias, voces y ritmos que hacen única a nuestra comunidad para encontrar